Good morning, everyone. It's now 10 a.m. Welcome to the SACS Forum. We are excited because we have a lot to share with you today. So, welcome. Okay, so first things first, we would like to go over some housekeeping items. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A icon located at the bottom of the screen. If you would like to unmute or provide verbal comment or questions, please raise your hand in the React icon below, and the host will enable you to speak. You will receive a message to unmute. You may also send your questions to saxinfo@cde.ca.gov. And you will also have an opportunity to ask questions at the very end of the presentation. So the presentation slides, documents, and associate links for today's meeting were emailed to SACS Forum listserv this morning. They were also available in the resource icon at the bottom of the screen. If someone can give me a thumbs up so we can know that it's working would be great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Prior meeting minutes and recordings are available on the California Department of Education CDE recap of SACS Forum meeting minutes webpage. And just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. On to announcements and informations. Derek will share with us next on the 24-25 unaudited actuals submission.
Thanks, Julie. Hello, everyone. This is Derek. All right, so all of the 2024-25 unaudited actual data submissions have been received, and we're currently conducting our review. CDE's review of the UA data submissions will include looking at the indirect cost calculations to ensure that the rates are calculated in accordance with CDE's delegation agreement with the U.S. Department of Education. We'll also be looking at exceptions to technical review checks, formed GAN data, charter school forms, and other items. So in the next couple of months, our office may contact LEA staff via email with questions regarding the indirect cost rate calculations or any other financial reporting questions. So we would appreciate your prompt response to our emails. All right, next slide. Okay, so just a reminder, the Office of Management and Budget Uniform Guidance threshold changes for federal grant awards was effective July 1st, 2025. These higher threshold amounts would also apply to state grant awards. And it would be for the single audit threshold, which increased from 750,000 to 1 million. The sub-agreement exclusion threshold, which increased from 25,000 to 50,000. And also the equipment capitalization threshold, which increased from 5,000 to 10,000. And our letter regarding this is posted to our CDE's ICR webpage, which we included a link to in the last slide. So hopefully no questions.
Anyone have any questions at this time?
Okay, good, we can move
on. Okay.
Reporting periods functionality. This year it includes all three interims. If you remember, last year it was the first and second interim release and then the end of year projection at a later time. So this time we are releasing all of them at the same time and hoping that that goes well. The release also included a validation table update, which will provide some details for a little bit later in this presentation. And the updates for interims were pretty much consistent with the changes that we produced for 25-26 budget. reporting period, and those included some additional, some new programs with dedicated lines on the fund forms, like the Proposition 28 and the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, and some updates for expired resources. And the information is detailed on our webpage under What's New. Are there any questions on that at the moment? All right. And then let's go to the next slide, please. Here we're providing some updates on the CSAM, the California School Accounting Manual, based on some questions we have received. One of the questions we get is, when will the new update be available? So if the current CSAM is dated November 2024, we're hoping to do another update next year, 2026, but that's going to depend on whether we have resources available for the update. In the meantime, any additional guidance that we have available is posted to the CDU website in a couple of different places. One is under Finance and Grants, Accounting Correspondence, and then also Finance Grants, Accounting, and Indirect Cost Rates. And we also added a sentence to our CSAM homepage to explain that, because we did get comments from the field that implied that if the guidance is not in the CSAM, it's not valid, which is not true, because the CSAM is as of a point in time, and any additional guidance that is produced afterwards is also valid and will be incorporated in the next edition of CSAM. And we're asking folks to keep an eye out for a couple more letters that we will be posting. One is for the inventory threshold change pursuant to recent legislation, and also new standardized account code structure object codes for AB 218 claims, which we'll cover also a little bit later in the presentation.
Are there any questions at this point?
There are some questions in the Q&A. I think Masha covered some of them already. Matt Phillips asked, do you have any update on when the 2025 Federal Compliance Supplement will be released?
We don't have an update at this time on that, unfortunately.
Okay, and then the next question from Raymond Lee. If the federal debt threshold is increasing to 10,000, does the LEA have the option of staying with a lower capitalization threshold of 5,000 for all purchases?
I believe that that should be an option at the LA's discretion.
I think there's
So
one. Sorry,
go
there's
ahead.
one more. Is there an update regarding Goal 5001 for special education? Was Goal 5001 retired? There is a SACS error for invalid goal by function for Goal 5000 with function 1110.
I can look into that. And report back. If you would, so this question is showing up as anonymous attendee. If we don't get a chance to respond here, please send us an email at SACS-info, and that way we can respond, because otherwise we will not be able to respond if we not sure where the question is coming from. But that's something we can look into. There's a comment here too. Don't see the slides under resources. I think there was a request for us to add the slides to the resources.
The slide should be already there in the resources. Is it not there? Let me check.
You may need to click on the document subsection. So there's
Yes.
links, documents, and speakers.
Yeah, in the document tab, there's 3 documents there that you should be able to click on it. Okay, so on to the next section. Herminio will be presenting regarding the SACS Data Viewer.
Thanks, Julie. Yes. So last month on October 13th, the CDE published 1,405 data sets for the 25-26 budget reporting period to the SACS Data Viewer. Thank you for all the county offices of education for promoting these data sets to the final state in the SACS web system. We're getting ready to republish the budget period again. So in early December, the CDE will republish the 25-26 budget datasets to capture any additional or revised submissions. The COE should promote any additional publishable datasets to the LEA Oversight Review completed state by November 28, 2025.
Thank you, Herminio.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay. Next speaker will present on the next slide.
Thank you, Julie. So hello, everyone. In the following section, I'll be going over updates regarding the Every Student Succeeds Act, per pupil expenditure survey, and the school level finance survey. First and foremost, I would like to go over some acronyms that I'll be referring to throughout this presentation. The first one is the Every Student Succeeds Act, which we refer to as ESSA, and the per pupil expenditure, PPE. Next one is the school level finance survey, SLFS. And last is the National Center for Education Statistics, which is NCES. Next slide. So thank you everyone for participating in and submitting your fiscal year 23-24 SFPPE and SLFS submission. So we had over 92% of the expected submissions, and that's great. So thank you to everyone who participated. As a friendly reminder, CDE collects the data on behalf of the LEAs. If there are any questions associated with this data, then the CDE will forward those questions received to the corresponding LEAs. So the next data collection window will collect fiscal year 24-25 UA data. We anticipate the SFPPE and the SLFS reporting system to be available for data collection starting January 1st until March 17th, 2026. We anticipate sending the access code letters in mid to late December. If your LEA does not receive the letter with its access code beginning January, please email essappe@cde.ca.gov requesting a copy of that letter. Our annual webinar, where we go over the data collection requirements of both surveys, is tentatively scheduled for January 20th, 2026, and the registration link will become available in the SFPPE reporting webpage by December 2025. Next slide. As a reminder, the upcoming SLFS data collection will include 3 new categories of current operating expenditures in addition to the previously collected instruction category. And school administration. For the exhibits or the data subsets, we're going to be collecting salaries paid to teachers, salaries paid to instruction staff or assistants, and books and periodicals. Detailed information about this data collection can be found in the SLFS reporting webpage. Next slide. So in the past few months, we've been working on updating the SLPPE and SLFS reporting system to capture these new data categories. So on screen, you have the first table, which is named the current operation expenditures table. And right below the title, we have a brief description of what the data that we're going to be collecting. So this table is broken down by 6 columns. The first column is a description of the current operation expenditures. The next column is the NCS functions that are being collected, and we have the SACS function codes associated or equivalent to the NCS functions. The next 3 columns are the salaries, employee benefits, other current expenditures, and we have provided the SACS codes associated with those expenditure categories. And lastly, we have the total current expenditures column, and that column is a pre-programmed summation field. So the values that the users input in those three columns will be automatically summed and will appear at the end and within that column. Next slide.
Rico, can you slow down a bit? There was a request.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry, I get all excited with this information, so I'll slow down. All right, so then next we have the exhibits data subsets table. So with that, it's broken down into three columns. So we have the exhibits column, which is the subsets, and then the next column is the NCS function with the equivalent SACS function codes. And you will see within those notes there, we also provide the associated object codes. So the intent here is to, if you were to have your full data set, will be to first filter by the function codes identified there, and then it will be a second filter for the object codes reference. And lastly is the amounts column, and in that it's the field where the users are able to input that amount from their data set. All those amounts are then summed together, and we have a last row there where it's titled total sum of exhibits, and that will be automatically calculated. So as a let's see, as a friendly reminder, or it's something to take note, is that this information being collected for the exhibit is a subset of the information of the data provided within the prior table. Therefore, for salaries paid to teachers, we expect to see that amount to be lower than the total amount of instruction expenditures. Just an FYI. And of course, we're going to have way more details in the webinar scheduled for January. So now we'll pause. I do apologize for going fast. So please send me a question in the Q&A. And if I can't get to it, then you could email me at slfs@cde.ca.gov. And if you do have any ESSA-PPE related questions, you could email ESSA-PPE@cde.ca.gov.
There's some questions in the Q&A. One of them, first one is for, I'm not sure I can say their first name correctly, but it's Virgin Dean Richmond. Sorry, I cannot type fast enough. Will the 2024 CSAM have an update page where it notes the change under Object 5100?
Where's that at?
It's under the Q&A.
Sorry.
I can move on while
Oh,
Derek.
yeah. So yeah, I think we're planning to make we'll make those updates probably next year. But yeah, we'll plan to update the threshold amounts for Object 5100.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is probably for Derek. Also, is from Spencer Blanda. For the capitalization threshold, will an LEA's minimum threshold raise from 5,000 to 10,000 to match the change in the OMB for the regular fixed assets, or is this just for federal fixed assets?
I think Marcia already mentioned that, but yeah, I think technically these increases relate to for federal programs. So I think it's up to the LEA's own policy if they want to update it, increase it.
And
Blanche, may I also chime in because there were a couple questions about the supplement and then one that says if the audit guide is not released yet, what are the steps the district need to take for submitting an extension past December 15th? So we provided a response with emailing to LEA audits. So that's definitely a good option, but also there was a in-depth discussion about this among county offices of education yesterday at ESCO. So if a school district is asking about audit extension, I would also encourage them to get in contact with their county office of education for specific guidance about audit extensions in this current environment that we're finding ourselves in. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
thank you. And one more question from Eddie Davidson. FYI, per CSAM, page 32010, goal 5001 should not be used with special education instructional functions such as 1110.
Thank you
Does
for the
act does
feedback.
okay.
We'll have to look into it. Thank you for the feedback, though. Is there any other questions?
I think we're
Okay.
just
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. If there's any questions that we don't get to, we'll get back to you at the end of the webinar, or we'll respond later through the SACS web notes when we post the answers. So moving on to accounting update. For the accounting updates, Jody will be sharing regarding updates on the validation table.
Oh, excuse me. Good morning, everyone. So just a really quick update on validation tables. Our last update was on October 29th, just last week. That new update was included in the October 29th SACS web system reporting period release. And the same day, the files were posted onto CDE's SACS valid code and combinations webpage for those LEAs who need them in their local systems. The highlights of that update, we included the long-awaited resource 6019 for the longest name ever, student support and professional development discretionary block grant. We opened the unrestricted lottery resource 1100 to object 8974 proceeds from SPIDAs. And we put an end date on the educator effectiveness resource 6266, last available fiscal year 25-26. There were some other changes, and for a complete list of those code combination updates, please see the SACS matrix updates document dated October 29th that was included in the resource icon this morning. That document is actually sent out to the listserv every time we do a validation table release. And if you would like to be on that listserv, there is a link to join on the SACS valid codes and combination webpage as well. We would like to acknowledge all the questions that we received regarding resource 6019 and the timing of releasing the tables to when LEAs needed to use the resource in their local systems. And we just wanted to point out this is nothing new. It happens from time to time, and it's actually a restriction of your local system. And so what our guidance is normally to just set up a locally defined resource code and record your transactions. And then once the resource becomes available, to go ahead and reclassify those transactions. So again, it's not ideal, but it's nothing new, and it happens from time to time. We are currently working on incorporating the SACS validation table process into the SACS web system. Because currently it's a separate standalone process. And because we are testing in both legacy and in SACS web, the timing has been a little off with the releases, but be patient with us. We hope to have the validation table process completely contained in SACS web system sometime in 2026. So that's all I have. Let me see if there's any questions on resource codes.
There's some questions regarding ESSA, PPE, and SLFS. Rigo, if you're able to answer, there's some questions. The first one is ESSA, PPE, and SLFS is only in Fund 01.
Thank you, Blanche. Yeah, I'm currently working on a response for that. I'll have a more concrete response in the Q&A, but in essence, it's going to be not only Fund 01, but it's all those funds that have TK through 12 current operating expenditures. So for example, if there's any fund associated with adult education, you wouldn't bring over those expenditures. So I'm writing a more concrete response, and I'll get back to everyone who's asking that question. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think there's two more, Rigo, related to this topic. First one's from Barbara. Should recreational aids be included in this reporting?
I saw that question, and I'll get back. That's a good question. I have to review it. I don't want to give the incorrect response at this time.
Okay, and then there's one more. it might be the same too. The exhibits do not need, I'm sorry, the exhibits do not need to include salaries paid to teachers subs.
Excellent question. So let me research that and get back to you. If you could please, I see that it says anonymous attendee, and as it was mentioned previously, if I can get to you, I can provide a response. Please email SLFS, and also it's very helpful for us to know who is the participant in the SACS forum. That way we could directly reach out to you. So I'll get back to that. I'll try to respond before the end of the webinar.
We can try to do both. We can try to individually respond, and if the question pertains across the board, include it in our FAQs on the webpage. But it is helpful to have these questions for things that we possibly haven't considered yet. So thank you.
Great questions. Okay. If there's no more questions at the moment, we will move on to the next slide. Derek will be presenting regarding AB 218 and AB 452.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, so we just want to kind of go over the some of the county requirements related to Education Code 41011.1. So this Education Code requires that the accounting systems used by LEAs to record their financial data must include a separate accounting of expenditures for actual payments related to legal settlements, judgments, or special assessments made through a joint pooling arrangement resulting from claims pursuant to Assembly Bills 218 and 452. Both of these bills relate to civil lawsuits related to childhood sexual assault. So next slide. Okay, so here's a set of our first set of proposed object codes. They relate to legal settlements and judgments. So to record actual payments from current funds for settlements or judgments against LEAs not covered by liability insurance, but are of a type that might have been covered by insurance. The first one is object code 5880, and that's payments for civil claims pursuant to AB 218-452. The second one is object code 5890, payments for civil claims not pursuant to AB 218-452. And for both of these, you would use function 7100, board and superintendent, or optionally function code 7110, board. Next slide. Okay, so the second set of proposed object codes relate to the special assessments, and they would be to record special assessments of a joint pooling arrangement to address liabilities as a result of civil claims. The first one, object code 5480, payments for civil claims pursuant to AB 218-452. The second one, object code 5490, payments for civil claims not pursuant to AB 218-452. And for these, you would use function code 7200, other general administration. So like I said, these are just proposed object codes. So if you have any comments or potential issues, feel free to send us a question to SACS Info, and we'll look at it. So that's all I have. So hopefully no questions.
Derek, there's a
Any questions?
question from Sarah Smart. When do we need to start using these object codes? Is this effective beginning 2025-26?
Agnes, I'm not really sure when we had planned to add these codes to SACS Web. I think for our estimated actuals, perhaps.
This is Agnes. For this code, we are still in the proposal stage, so that's why we kind of try to get some feedback from the LEA to see whether they have any questions or maybe issues using this proposed object code. And actually, that's the plan is we're gonna issue them. Yes, it will be valid for 2025-26, but we understand that there will be not really for budget or interim. So definitely those. If we're gonna have it, there should be for 2025-26 UA period. And all the actual. So yeah, we're still working on it, and hopefully, early next year in 2026, we will finalize. Once we have it, definitely we will issue a validation table, with all these and new object codes.
Thank you, Agnes. And one more question from Janelle. Will these accounts be automatically omitted from calculations that would be skewed by high cost in these accounts like reserve, ICR, CEA, et cetera?
This is Derek. No, well, regarding like overstating the indirect cost pool, no, it's like the first set of codes for the legal settlements and judgments. Yeah, they won't be excluded from the calculation. Instead, they'll be accounted for in the base costs, and so that's why we're making these valid with function 7100 or 7110. But the proposed object codes for the special assessments will be included in the indirect cost pool.
Great, thank you, Derek. Okay, if there's no more questions, we're going to go ahead.
So I think there was also a reference to current expense of education. I think we need to take that back and look at it. And there's also a question that says, if we're already using object 5880 for something else, do we have to reclass those expenditures?
This is Agnes. And actually, we understand, some LEA, they really locally set up some, they call it locally, object code, within the 5800 range. And actually, we have been always telling LEA that we really preserve the right, to have all this object code range, because we understand, maybe down the road we have, some other needs, to use, those code. So that's why we always strongly recommend LEA don't do it, but somehow LEA is still doing it. So wherever those, we set up a range for, say, locally defined, we will specifically, saying that specify in our, SACS code. And sorry about that, but somehow, this is a new mandate, new piece of ed code. We have to develop some codes within some range. So that is what we have so far. Thinking about this is a really more appropriate one. So that's why we propose it out there, to talk to you guys, to feel like to see the feedback. And if it's really something inconvenience to you, all I can say is we're always telling LEA, please be remember, don't use it, because we never really set a locally defined range for you guys to use. So that would come into issues just like right now, like this time. And sorry about that.
Thank you, Agnes. There's another anonymous attendee asking that they've received an invoice due December 15th, 2025 for AB 218.
Is that a supplemental or special assessment or supplemental premium, or what kind of invoice? Or is this an actual that just I think we're these potentially these expenditures come in many different forms. I think that the proposed object codes that we are announcing here is something we plan to go forward with. So if an LEA wants to take advantage of those now by designating them in their local system, hopefully they will match what we eventually do release. But until we, I think, have a validation table update with these codes, you won't be able to I think we have to figure out a few more elements before we are able to release a validation table update with these codes. But as a draft, they can be used. Would you agree, Agnes? To code expenditures?
For this
Yes.
particular question, yeah, probably, yeah, like I said, it's kind of hard to tell you what object or function code for AB 218. So you shoot us an email SACS info. Because currently doing our reviews, like if we do, because right now what we've seen is like as far as like legal settlements and judgments, LEA's have been charging these costs to Object Code 5800, including in the indirect cost pool of like Function 7200, and we've been moving those costs out of the indirect cost pool into some Function 7100 as to so they don't overstate the indirect costs rate. Like if it's like for special assessments or what we've seen so far currently, I think LEAs are recording those or treating those like insurance costs and charging those to 5,400. So like, yeah, so yeah, so that should be fine. Yeah.
So we're finding that depending on what insurance arrangement a particular LEA has, things might be titled differently. And so that's why we're trying to provide these descriptions so that the LEAs can make the best assessment of their specific situation to see how to code these costs. From what we understand, that there's some JPAs that may have a supplemental or special assessment that's directly titled AB 218, others might not. Some JPAs don't do special assessments, but they might have a premium increase that's related to this. So these costs come in a variety of quote unquote packages. And so I think the more we learn as the state, the better guidance that we can provide, but also it would be important that if anybody comes to us with that question, try to describe the situation more completely to us, because we're not, regular players in the insurance market. We don't know all the possible variations of these expenditures. What we're trying to do is just meet the intent of statute that is trying to, the way we understand it is the statute is trying to zoom in on how much these claims are costing the LEAs across the state. That's what I think we believe that the legislation was intended to do, is to nail down these expenditures and separate them from just the big bucket of insurance costs and civil claims, the actual payments for the claims, which we understand there are much fewer actual claims being paid out. Most of the liabilities are being taken care of through insurance, and then also excess liability insurance that LEAs may get. Sorry for the long answer.
There's a lot of questions pertaining to that, but due to the time, I think it's better we'll try to go through these questions at the end of our presentation, or we'll provide a response back to you via SACS info.
So there's reference to self. We're familiar with self. We have seen their paperwork. It's so self invoices, if we mean the special assessment from self, then we are providing that guidance here. And the proposed objects 5480, 5490. So that's one JPA that's familiar to us, and we're familiar with it. Extra insurance premium applicable to use 5480. Again, I believe it is, but again, you would have to look at the specific document to answer for sure. And then there's also a question, are these proposed codes are for actual claims, not for supplemental insurance? So there's two sets. There is a set of object codes for actual claim payments if the LEA is paying them directly, which we understand is rare. And then there's supplemental insurance or the self-supplemental payment. That's the second set of object codes that we're proposing. So I believe the answer to that is yes, two separate sets of codes. And Agnes and Derek, jump in if you need to. think some of these questions are repeats.
This is Agnes again. Yes, I think just like what Marsha said, because it seems like a lot of these questions really keep asking about is really for actual claims or actually for the increased insurance payments. For the actual claims, definitely the 58 range, the 5880 and 5890 should be definitely really for the actual claims. But for the increased insurance payments, somehow we really have to really look at the details, or maybe the LEA really thinking about it, because according to statute, they really talk about special assessment of a joint pooling arrangement. As far as we understand, it's really like the self seems like it's really fit in this one, because I understand they send out the extra payment and extra invoice, and they really particularly specifically talking about those are really AB 218 and 452 related. So 100% those can be coded with the 5480 range. But for the extra insurance, I think
So I
right
think
now we still really need to more information to thinking about it is really whether fit in this range. I mean, fit in this, what do you call it, special assessment or not.
Julie, if I may ask, I think we might have a typo in our slides, and that's what maybe is causing confusion. Can you go back one slide,
Yes.
please? Okay, so these are the two portions of the new legislation. So legal settlements or judgments. So 5880 and 5890. And this we say payments for civil claims pursuant to AB 218 or AB 452. And if you then advance one more slide, where we have object 5480, I think somehow it says payments for civil claims. I think we had a potentially maybe a copy and paste error, because that is information from the previous slide. So 5480, 5490 meant we were proposing those and putting those forward here as the insurance related activities like special assessments, premiums for excess liability insurance, that type of thing. And so I think maybe it's the wording on our slide that is causing some confusion. And I mean specifically the 2 bullet points after the object description. I think we may need to go back and refine that. So I think that might be what's causing the questions.
Okay, we can go back and refine it.
I think it's our slide. And so we will take the questions that we received. If LEAs have specifics, specific documents, like somebody was referencing an invoice, if you don't mind sharing that with us, that will help us be better informed and provide better guidance that we can put in our letter that we will issue and post on the CDU website regarding this. The more terminology that we can gather and different examples from the field, the better our guidance will be. So thank you for your patience.
Any other questions to address? Okay. In essence of time, we will move on, but we will go back and address these questions at the end of the presentation and throughout. And if we don't get to you, we'll try to address it back in the meeting minutes later on when we release that and post to the web. Okay, so moving on to SACS financial reporting, Marsha will be providing us the update on the SACS web form redesign project.
Okay, switching gears. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to capture all the questions. 1 second. Okay. So this is a discussion that we have started sharing with the county offices of education already, and are would like to make sure everybody is aware that there is the new SACS web system does require a rework or redesign in order for all the forms and reports used in the system to be brought into compliance with accessibility requirements, because our department, federal legislation, and state legislation do require that all of our content be accessible to individuals with disabilities. And I believe the same applies to local governments. The work has begun this past July. The developers have designated staff that are working on this with us approximately through June 2027. And sometime in this time frame, the SACS web users will see new new SACS web forms or existing SACS web forms that look different being rolled out to SACS web systems. So our timeline is to be determined. We will attempt to perhaps push forward to production some of the simpler forms and refine our process as we go from the simpler to the more complicated ones. On the impact of the changes, we noted 3 different things to keep in mind. So there is, within the SACS web system, there's the user interface, which is the within the application where the SACS web user looks at the fund form or supplemental form and either hand keys some of the data or looks at the data that's been extracted from general ledger or supplemental forms. Because the forms are undergoing a redesign, the developers are looking, quote unquote, behind the scenes and realizing that they can make improvements to the architecture of these forms. So we are hoping for improved navigation and better user experience. So faster scrolling from field to field, text not overlapping over, words not overlapping over each other as the user scrolls from horizontally. So that might be happening. You might also see the font being slightly different. Some of the, for example, the location of the help button might be moved. So those are some of the things that we are designing and eventually will be testing in the next 24 months. The export to Excel is one of the features provided by the system for every form. In the most recent design mock-ups, we have seen an improvement there as well, where the font is larger, the fields are formatted in a more useful manner. There are some forms that we identified as perhaps not needing the Excel export option, and we sent out a survey to the SACS web users, using the database we have within the system this week, I think yesterday. So if anybody is interested in participating in that survey, we would appreciate the feedback. And that was asking whether certain forms really are used in an Excel format out in the field. And those specifically were criterion standards and some of our certification forms. And also the last item is the export to PDF. So every SACS form and financial report is available in an export to PDF. This is the most widely publicly used format because it is provided by the LEAs to their governing boards as part of the budget review and approval process, provided to the public and provided to the public by the state through the new SACS data viewer website. These are the most difficult forms and products to make compliant, and they will probably undergo the biggest change. That will be the biggest noticeable change to the users. So one thing that has to happen is the font has to increase. That means the documents will become longer, and our development team is working on an option for the SACS web users to allow printing options. So there's going to be some extra pages included in the forms for accessibility requirements, and we're hoping that we can provide options for printing with or without those pages. So be on the lookout for that. If we don't anticipate much of content changes, but if there are any, like wording, for example, we will alert the SACS web users to the changes on the forms, most likely probably through our regular methods, like the regular SACS web releases and the What's New document that we put together. We'll make sure to highlight any form changes in those documents. So that's all I had. So there's a question, will cash flow be considered to update to allow data to be imported via an Excel file? It is not something that we're considering at the moment, but we are, the developers are well aware of the data entry challenges with the cache form, and they are building a prototype that does work faster. I can ask about but possible import option, but I would kind of venture to say that perhaps during the original SACS web design, this was already considered, but we can check on those notes to see if that was something that was considered originally. But form cache, we're hoping that its new in its reincarnation will be a more user-friendly form. There's another question, any update on charter alternative form for budget and interim form availability? So that's a question on the table. There was the building of the alternative form for budget and interim was something that was on our workload list for the SACS web system. We hit a pause because there was pending legislation that would have required all charter schools after a transition period to use SACS forms. That legislation did not pass during this legislative cycle, so we're back to considering that. And if, you know, if there's specific information that you think might help us as we are considering the development of the budget of the alternative form for budget and interims, please message us. Email us in SACS-info, and we can consider that. But that is something that, because we've been asked every year by LEAs to provide that, that is something that we're considering. The current expense of education is another form that's been requested to be provided for first and second interims to allow LEA's planning, and that is also something that we're considering. There's a question, to whom do I forward our AB 218 invoice email from self? SACS-info would be great, because we have a good process for how those questions get routed to our staff.
Is there any additional questions at the moment? Anyone want to add any questions?
So there is a question again about AB 218, and I think it's about the timing of when our new object codes will be in effect. If someone already paid the assessments and coded them a certain way, should they transfer the expense for the current year assessment invoice? I think this project is about data collection and data gathering. So I think I would venture to say that until the object codes are included in SACS web systems, we cannot expect everybody to comply with those new coding requirements. So I think that in the meantime, we're seeking feedback, and in the meantime, I think it's probably going to be up to the LEA as far as, I don't think we're asking for anybody to create journal entries to reverse a bunch of transactions and create, additional workload. I think it's going to be, we would expect everyone to use the new object codes once they're fully built into SACS web system and provided to the LEAs through the validation table update. That would be my expectation.
Okay, looks like the panelists is still trying to respond to some of the questions as we speak. If you have any questions to add, this would be a good time, or if you want to raise your hand, if you have any questions that we can respond live. There's the questions regarding the link to the presentation. I believe the presentation was sent out earlier this morning to listserv, and it's also located at the resource button at the bottom under the documents tab. But because we have one edit, we want to refine, so we'll probably be sending out presentation again with the corrections, right, Masha?
I apologize, Julie. I had some freezing. Can you repeat?
Oh, I was mentioning that since we have one slide that we want to refine the definitions for the new object codes, that we will be resending out the presentation once we make the edits.
It's a good idea. Thank you. We'll do that.
Yeah. So I think we are at the end of our meeting. So if there's any questions that's outstanding, likely that our team will need to some time to go back and research on those items and get back to you. And we might incorporate with the meeting minutes when we post them if we don't have the answer for you today. So on to, I think this is the end of our presentations, and we really appreciate everyone being so responsive and asking all the great questions. It really helps us when you participate and interact with us. The more we hear about your feedback, it just only makes us better. Thank you for the participation. We appreciate it. So on to just announcing the next meeting will be scheduled for February 24th, 2026. So we look forward to everyone attending that meeting again. We hope to have more information to share with you. And as always, if you have any questions, please email us at SACS-info. And also we just reach out to us any way you can, and we appreciate it. Does anybody else have anything to add at this time?
There's a question, Masha, regarding SACS web design. You stated something would be noticeable. Could you restate that?
Yes, and I just want to qualify that when we're talking about like the formats and what's most noticeable and whatnot, some things are quite subjective because folks use the SACS web products in different ways. So from our team's experience, I think, and chime in if you guys think otherwise. I think the layout of the PDF versions of the forms is the one system output that will look most differently, that will have most of the changes based on what we've seen so far. And that is because the forms will be of a bigger font. They will have to be laid out differently. And there's also quite a bit of accessibility requirements that drive the the table format. So if you think about, fund forms, MYP, and anything that is produced as a grid, as a table, is very difficult for screen readers to read if it has merged cells, subheaders, that type of thing. And so that's where the most of the I think the differences between current and proposed forms are going to be in the PDF version of the forms. And it's also the most difficult one to make compliant. So it's also going to have, the PDF will have 2 additional pages in the front. That's tentatively the plan. Cover page and the table of contents, and all of that is aimed at improving navigation for individuals with disabilities or anybody that might need some visual assistance. So the PDF is the biggest, we think the most noticeable set of changes will be on the PDF forms. Hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you,
And
Masha. There's also an attendee that would like to ask the question. I will unmute you now. Juan Liu, are you able to speak? Hello? Juan, are you able to speak? Are you able to unmute yourself? Blanche, can you try to unmute Juan? Looks like it might not work on my side.
yeah, I had to ask Quan to unmute.
Oh, there you go. Hello? Go ahead with your question.
Oh, I don't have a question. Thank you.
Oh, well, say hi, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Quan. Anyone else has questions that they want to answer live? Did Jessica Taryn had a question? I saw the hand raised earlier, but I think it was lowered. No? Okay. Okay, I think we're at the end of presentations. I hope we answer majority of your questions. We really appreciate your time and you working hard at the fields and give us feedback, and we appreciate you and all that you're doing out in the field. So we hope to have all your questions answered later today, or like I said, posting the meeting minutes. So, and we will be sending out the revised presentation with updated one slide before the new expenditure codes, object codes. So thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate everyone. Unless there's any last minute questions, I think
There are some last minute question
okay.
and from an anonymous attendee. If the previous accountant is gone, how would I get access to SACS?
Anyone know the answer to that question?
Hi, this is Veronica. You can talk to your county office, whoever is in charge of, perhaps you have a user management person. Talk to your county office and find out who at your county office can give you, either the person at the county office can give you an account for SACS, or they'll tell you who at your LEA can give you that. But start there, start at your county office.
And the user guide that we have available online goes through the list of user roles and permissions that you would be then requesting. So that was also a good resource. But like Veronica said, the assignment would have to be done by someone with a user management role.
And we have Kelly Machado who have her hand raised. You have to, I have to ask to unmute you. I think maybe Kelly, maybe she doesn't have any questions.
At least we tried that once and it worked, so we know that this feature does work. So thank you very much for trying that. Okay. And then I think we're good.
Okay. If there's no more questions, Blanche?
Yep, I don't see any questions. No hand raised.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for attending. We're looking forward to seeing you at February 24th, 2026. So we'll hope you can join us again. We appreciate you. Thank you and have a good day.
Thanks, Julie.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.